And Dr. Joshua Walker is Director of Global Programs at APCO Worldwide, a public affairs practice. He joins us from the U.S. state of Virginia. Welcome back to the broadcast.
Thank you, Susan.
Austria feeling is backed into a corner and has announced this cap on migrants. It's clearly a violation of EU law. Was this the best plan of action for Austria?
I think Austria feels like it's the only thing it can do. I mean, the way it happened is pretty dramatic. Doing it over dinner, completely flouting kind of the other major players. It's getting a lot of flack, but it's not the only one. There are many other countries in Eastern Europe in particular that are feeling the same way and don't feel like the Europeans can come up with a common position, so therefore they did it on their own.
That's right. French closing portions of the Calais camp, as you know, and now European leaders from Berlin to Vienna, what we were talking about, to Athens, improvising their own contradictory policies. Is this the right course for all countries until something broader can be agreed on?
It's really a shame, because the problem is if all the European countries could agree on a common cause, which everybody says they want to, they wouldn't have this problem. But because you've got so many different countries in Europe who are all doing different things, the major leader, whether it's Germany or France, are doing very different things, and other countries are beginning to just kind of find their own way. There are domestic pressures as well, which makes it even more difficult with the populist feeling in Europe today.
So what happens if other countries close their borders or introduce quotas?
We've seen this before, Susan, and when they start closing those borders, the refugee crisis gets worse. There's a humanitarian disaster. The EU is already talking to Turkey to try to figure out ways of stopping the refugees from even getting to their border. So the question is, in the big summit that comes up in March, will they be able to come together with countries like Turkey, and then internally will Europe be able to straighten its own house in order?
When you think about it, a smaller area like Austria capping at 3,500, if you do the math, what is that, 1 million people a year or something? That's a lot of people.
That is a lot, actually. And when you look at the difference in terms of how many the American government has taken in or said they're going to take in of Syrian refugees, that's actually a large number given how small the country is, as you pointed out. The problem is the need and how the proximity of how close they are to where the migrants are coming from Syria through Turkey into the Balkans up through Austria. They're all trying to make their way, whether it's to Germany or to France or to Britain. They're trying to make it to Western Europe. And these Eastern European countries do not want to be a part of that process and want to find a new way to get through it. It's a disaster either way you put this.
Right, and now we're talking about spring just around the corner. How much worse could it get?
I mean, we've seen this before. It could get a lot worse, because when spring comes, there tends to be an influx of refugees. The fighting in Syria is not getting any better. It's only getting worse. So, I mean, we could see this get worse. When you close the border, suddenly there's panic among refugees and problems develop. So I hope there's some type of humanitarian solution before we get to the peak season for refugees to be coming in the spring and then the summer.
And then how is this affecting the EU's border-free Schengen zone?
I mean, it's really putting a major stress on it. We saw Britain and the EU come to an agreement about this. The Schengen zone only includes certain countries, but it really makes a mockery of the entire process if one member is able to jump out when it doesn't want to. So the EU is being tested. The entire concept of free flow of migrants and laborers are being tested. This is going to really test what the EU is all about, and can they stick together during this major crisis.
Dr. Joshua Walker, we certainly thank you joining us from Virginia.
Thanks for having me.